Kim,
Yeah.
B5.
Miss.
Miss.
I think. Yep.
You want to take a guess?
Sure. E8.
E8.
Yep.
Miss.
You guys tell me if he's cheating. Just kidding. You don't.
See, if you've ever played a game of Battleship, one of the things you'll notice is at the end of the game, you will always have more white pegs on the board than you do red ones.
Yeah.
And if you go back and you look at your last argument, I'll guarantee you've got more white pegs, all these things that had nothing to do with what you were really fighting about, than you do red ones actually dealing with the issue of why you had conflict in the first place.
It's true.
Because it is the enemy's job to deceive and to distract.
Yep.
He wants you to get fighting over here and fighting over here, and he knows what buttons to push to send you drifting in the wrong direction.
Absolutely.
And guess what happens when a missile misses its target? There's casualties.
Yeah.
We don't want casualties.
Nope.
And a lot of times, wonderful events can be ruined because of a misfired missile, a missile that missed.
Yeah.
The enemy doesn't want you to get to the root of the problem. He wants you all over the board dealing with things that don't even matter, because this is what's going to disrupt and destroy that marriage.
Yeah.
So when you're arguing, when you're having conflict, when you're having a disagreement, one of the things you should do, so if Kim went to play right now, I'm going to listen to what she's going to call out, but I'm already thinking where I'm going next. So here's my advice to you. Listen up without winding up. Listen up without winding up. Because a lot of times in an argument, when she's talking, or disagreement, however you want to call it, a strong conversation, a lot of times when we're having that strong disagreement, I'm already thinking about my response in my mind to blow her out of the water.
Right.
Because she's so wrong in everything she's saying. So I'm just going to fire this missile and I'm going to blow her out of the water. You need to listen up without winding up.
That's right.
Listen truly to what it is that they're saying.
That's right.
Look for solutions, not soft spots.
Yep. And I think that's where we say torpedo the past. We know things in the past that have upset our spouse, and we know if we just go to this thing, it will totally get them off target, because we kind of feel like they are right in what they want to talk to us about. So if we can just miss aim and go on something in the past, it'll get them going on this. And so that's why we're saying torpedo the past, focus, target the present, and together we get solutions. But when we're going at each other, nothing ever gets solved. And I mean, it's truly authentic. Just this week, we've been preparing this message. We've been having an issue of conflict. And we keep reminding ourselves, wait a minute, this is us together. We're making the solution. It's not you fighting against me. This is us together. The only way you can have a solution is when you come together in agreement that we're not fighting about the past or past issues. We got to target this solution, this problem. So if you bring up past tense when you're having a discussion, you're never going to solve the present. It's never going to happen. You'll stay in the past and you'll just keep drudging up the past, but you'll never be able to live in the present and have the marriage and the relationship God wants you to have.
Let me ask you this
today.
question, simple question. Who is the best at bringing up your past? So you're never more like the devil than when you're bringing up somebody's past.
It's true.
And you're never more like God than when you're talking about somebody's future.
Absolutely.
So I don't want to read Hebrews 8:12.
Solutions are future. Hebrews 8:12. For I will forgive their wickedness and remember their sins no more. And then Philippians says, one thing I do. So if just one thing you can do after today, forget the things that are behind, strain toward what is ahead. But you can't do both. So your marriage, your relationship can never, ever go forward if you haven't let go and forgot the past. And so I would say today, if you leave, one thing, do this. Forget yesterday. That's the only way you're going to move forward. Only way.
I'm trying to think about a time that we ever counseled a couple, and they sat in front of us, and the wife looked at us and said, you know what? We were in an argument, and I brought up his past, and do you know all of our marriage problems went away?
Yeah,
I've never been in a counseling session like that. I brought up the past, I accused them of the past, I reminded them of their past, and we've been in perfect agreement ever since I brought up the past. It just doesn't work. You got to target the present, stay present tense.
Yep.
I can remember when me and Kim used to have a disagreement when we were first married.
Yep.
Every disagreement, she thought life was over.
Absolutely.
Everyone.
It was over.
Now, why did you think that every disagreement, life was over?
Well, I think I tend to be, women, a lot of times we're more relational. So we find our value in relationships. Men more find their value in their achievements and their accomplishments. And so for me, I started realizing if he was upset about something or not happy with me, I was upset and my life couldn't be good. If something was going wrong and things were disruptive, it just, oh, that's it. That's the end of the world. That's all that's ever going to be. And God really started dealing with my heart because I kept saying, well, if he just would be happier with me, or if this wouldn't bother him, or if this, then I would feel better and I could do better. And God really started dealing with my heart and said, you have made him and your marriage your idol. See, anything that controls your emotional state, anything. Some of us, our kids are our idol. And if they're happy, we're happy. If they're upset, we're upset. Some of us, our job is our idol. But I had made my happiness and my contentment and my peace rested on our relationship and how he was feeling. And so it became an idol to me. And that's one thing I always encourage people when I'm talking to them is if your emotional state, or if your peace and your contentment and your hope for the future and all these things rests on a person or your marriage or your relationship, number one, that's too much pressure for him.
Go on, girl.
That's so much pressure.
That's a good word.
That's too much pressure to put on him. But number two, he's not my source of peace.
Come on.
He's not my source of joy.
That's good.
And he's not my contentment. And he doesn't provide my needs. God does. And so I had to check myself. It should be God, then my family. And so that always, it's a checkpoint in me to see if I'm so disrupted because my kids aren't going right or he's not going right, my worship has shifted. And I'm finding my worth in him and not in God. So,
it's a good word.
Should we move
Rule
on?
number 4.
Rule number 4, surface the submarines. Surface the submarines. Surface the submarines. There's things you need to bring to the surface. So I don't know, okay, I'm gonna take a little poll here. So all of us, when faced with conflict, we have 2 responses. Fight, like I'm gonna attack it, we're gonna go at it, or flight, I'm out of here. All right, how many fighters do I have? Like I'm attacking it, I'm running after it, we're going full force. If you're married and you're both fighters, you need this message, right? No, I'm kidding. Just joking. How many flighters do I have? People like, I'm out, I'm running, I'm going away. It's okay, you can be honest. That's me. Me all day. I do not like conflict. I don't like to walk in a room and people seem tense. I tune it out. I run out of the, still, people in the office know if a meeting gets awkward, I go, I leave. I got to call, I got to get out.
And I'm like, put me right in the middle of it.
Right?
I want to be right in the middle of it.
I just can't handle that.
I even told her in times that we've had conflict, in times of our conflict, and she would start to walk out and I'd say, hey, you're welcome to leave, but just know when you get back, I'll be sitting right here. I'm not going anywhere.
And I would just go run, I get in the car. That's just my initial response is get away, get away, get away. I don't like this, I don't like this, I don't like this. And so if I'm not careful, I don't surface the submarines because to avoid that feeling of conflict, yeah, we're cool, everything's good, what do you want to do? All right, me too, I agree with you, absolutely. And I would just bury it because I don't want to deal with the conflict. But when you do that eventually, there's going to be a big eruption. And sometimes it can even come out internally with anxiety and different things because you didn't surface those submarines.
I told Kim a story about how submarines, in the past, these battleships would come over the top and they would drop these depth charges to try to damage the submarine so that it would surface. Well, some of these submarines found this trick that they would load the torpedo tubes with garbage and old clothes, and even if there was a dead body on board, they would put it and they would launch it out so that would all float to the surface and make the ship on top think that they had sank the submarine. Yeah. But it was just a fake, and you had a great point with that.
And that's what I think sometimes we fake out in marriage. And we, because we really don't want to deal with the issue, which is usually our own issue. So one thing I've realized, and that God uses relationships to refine us. And so God uses relationships to make us who he wants us to be. We've used the illustration before, your spouse is like your sandpaper, right? Smoothing your rough edges, but it don't feel good all the time. But God uses relationships to help us deal with us. And when you don't really deal with the underlying issues and you just keep saying, no, we're good, we're good, we're good, we're good, it's usually there's something, it's not really a marriage issue, it's usually a me issue that I don't want to deal with. I don't want to deal with that I'm selfish in that area. I don't want to deal with my past perception, and so I'll just keep saying we're fine. But when you do that, everything's not fine. And if you're not careful, he was giving me a good education about D-Day. And can you tell him about D-Day? Because I don't remember what you told me.
Avoid the D word and avoid D-Day. So if you know in World War II history, D-Day is the ultimate battle. That's when the war turned, was D-Day. If you want to avoid a D-Day in your marriage, in your relationship, avoid the D word.
Yep.
And the D word is divorce.
Yep.
I don't care how mad we've been at each other.
Nope.
We never even whisper the word divorce.
Nope.
It's not in our vocabulary.
Absolutely.
It's not an option. We don't talk about it.
No.
We don't say, well, maybe we're going to get a divorce. Absolutely not.
No
It
way.
never even leaves our mouth, because whatever comes out of our mouth is going to come into our lives.
Yeah. Yep.
So if I don't want a D-Day, then I better avoid the D word.
And I think that's so important, because if you don't surface those big submarines, I mean, we've talked to couples before, and they're like, out of nowhere, she was just done. And women, we're really bad about this sometimes, because we would rather just kind of avoid issues, fix things, and then eventually, oh, I'm just done. I check out. And sometimes our spouse had no idea, because we didn't really bring to surface those things, because it took a little extra work. And sometimes we don't want to do the work to surface the things, but really what we're doing is we're running from God and the work he wants to do in our heart. That there's things in my heart that God wants to get out, and he's using my spouse to do that.
That's good.
Because our marriage is just a reflection of God and his love. And so there are things, so you can run from a spouse, but you're going to marry another spouse, and that same thing's going to show up. And then you'll go to spouse 3, that same thing's going to show up. Because it had nothing to do with the other person. There was something in your heart God was trying to bring to the surface through your relationship.